transform. Now I'm perfectly ready.
Okay. Well, how do we begin this? We're
live?
We're live. I'm live. You live.
How you guys doing?
I guess we'll just do some introductions. I'm Fitzyhere. I play Sombra sometimes.
I'm Ruben Sargasm. I also play Sombra sometimes.
I'm Alec Dawson, lead hero designer on Overwatch 2.
And I'm Andre Brahamian, hero designer on Overwatch.
There we go.
We're set then. We're all familiar with each other now. Let's go.
So we got you guys here today to talk about our favorite hacker, Sombra, and we got some questions for you. But I have to pull up my questions. So hold on one second. Where did I put them? Is the questions? There we go. I got it.
Is there anything we want to say before we just start the questions off the rip, or do we just start the questions off the rip?
We can just start the questions. I know the blog just went up a little bit earlier for all the with some of all the details, and Andre had like a story in there about the development story and everything. But we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into it here right now. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm starting off. So, okay. So she's had reworks in the past, and I don't even know what number this is. This is like, I don't know, because what do you consider rework and stuff? But why another one? And what were your goals with this one? I know you have the goals in the doc in the directors or the designers thing, but why? Mm-hmm. If you want to give a little more deeper into what was the main goal? I know a lot of I heard was like, oh, she's annoying, we want to change that, make her a little more able to deal with. But
yeah, I can start here. So when we think about reworking a character or hero in Overwatch, it's really about, do they have the correct building blocks in place, or do we feel like there's enough knobs there for us to tune appropriately to get the right player experience from that hero in particular, and also to have enough counterplay and enough interaction on the other side as well. So when looking at Sombra in particular, we wanted to really look at our loops and try to make those a bit more active, a lot more feel like you're committed and being engaged in fights, feel like you're a member of the team that's more impactful as an individual as well. So, and have that be something that is more visible in game, So with this one in particular, I think after while going through the rework, some things came in where, we wanted to look at how stealth operated, what she could do during stealth. We wanted to look at things like, hey, can she be a better duelist? Can she take fights a bit more efficiently and be, a lot more deadly? Which I think in this version you will see that. And then, some of the other things in terms of encouraging players to learn her a bit more. I think a lot of times we saw a lot of behavior at certain ranks, summer players, they do the loop where they throw the translocator on the health pack, do the whole thing, go teleport back. And a lot of times when you're playing with Sombra, it didn't always feel like that was actually benefiting the team overall as much. And how can we just make her benefit the team a bit better and make that more visible during the game?
Well, that's what we're here for. We help people out, figure out how to do that.
Yeah, we got you guys.
If they choose. I can't help all the people that don't want to watch, but okay. So out of all of these iterations and whatnot, with Virus being here, was there always like I can't remember when you tweeted it. I know it was like, oh, there's stealth and there's translocator, one of these have to go, and I know that was like, you can't take away one, like it just doesn't work. So was it always were you always going to add Virus, or were you always trying to keep the abilities together, or like the stealth and translocator, or were there iterations where you tried to completely get rid of those? So I guess did you try to keep her intact and whatnot to what her core was? Because obviously different people think differently of what makes Sombra a core, or what is core to Sombra rather.
Yeah, I could dive into this. So we started off with just modifying like what we could explore around the existing kit. So we started with like making some changes around hack or translocator or stealth, whether it was like limiting the duration on translocator or combining translocator with stealth, like so you translocate, you get stealth. Um, and same with maybe even cutting translocator altogether and seeing like sometimes it's just like exploring like what it's like to not have something to understand the value behind it too. So we, like when we cut translocator, we learned like, all right, this is really taking out a lot of her flanking potential, map traversal aspects and stuff like that. So it not necessarily that we wanted to do that, but more like we wanted to understand more behind like the values of it, and then we could like focus on maybe what we could tweak around it. But yeah, so there was a lot of time we iterated around the kit before we settled on like, all right, stealth is moved to a passive, and then translocators changed, and that gave us room for a new ability to add more damage. So that definitely came in later with like when we added virus or other exploring other types of abilities.
I think with Sombra as a hero in the roster, she's a bit interesting where for a lot of heroes, you can point to maybe one thing that's really like core to their identity and their fantasy. I think Sombra has a few, and over time we wanted to make sure that we did preserve that because it was really important to us that her identity didn't necessarily from this hacker fantasy shift too far away from that. And when you think about that, you are thinking about translocator, you're thinking about hacking, you're thinking about stealth. And through the iteration process, I think we're like, hey, these have to stay in some form, one or another. But how can we make room for something else? And putting stealth on the passive was one of the reasons we did that.
Well, and
I think you guys did a good job on that.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it's a mix between like trying to keep the core but also make it work, and so much of Sombra's kit is like intertwined where it's like, okay, if you get rid of translocator, then like, yeah, sure, you can go flank and hack, but then you're kind of stuck. Like, okay, you can get rid of stealth, but then like, how are you gonna get into a position to hack somebody? So it was kind of, I was definitely worried one of them was going, and I was like, no, she's gonna be terrible because you're not gonna be able to hack anything, unless they, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how it will eventually pan out on the ladder and whatnot. But yeah, I'm glad that the translocator and the stealth and the hack kind of stayed as part of her kit. But speaking of like previous, trying to keep her abilities intact and whatnot, I guess you kind of already talked about it, of some of like the previous iterations. Like, was there anything crazy that was just like busted or just like didn't do anything or anything along those lines?
Some of both really at times. Yeah, like I mentioned like times where we time limited the either stealth or translocator, or even like trying hack as like a back to being a simple silence again with a longer duration, like harkening back to the old Overwatch 1 release days. Again, just trying to explore things and then and learn from them and see like what our value is. Sometimes it's like if we exaggerate or tune things, we might identify some strength or highlight out of it that we could utilize later. We definitely tried like different ideas around hack. I kind of mentioned a little bit of these in the blog as well, trying to explore different functionalities around that.
Do you want to talk about Cyberwire a little bit, Andre? I think that one in particular, like that stood out as like a thing that didn't work, but
yeah,
it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to just exploring what new abilities we were trying, there was a long list of ideas, and then many of them we iterated on. So yeah, I mean that one was one of my more favorite ones of this cybernetic wire that she would whip in front of her in an arc that would damage people. Like deal damage instantly to anyone in front of her in an arc. Really cool concept and idea and theme around her, but that was kind of a lesson learned in terms of like a couple key aspects. One was a lot of instant damage being dealt out of a character coming out of stealth is hard to react and deal with. And the other aspect was a physical type of wire arc is cool and all, but it also kind of combined with that ranged gun aspect kind of conflicts a little bit with struggling on the range of that aspect in the first person of knowing like what that distance is in those moments, especially when you're able to hit scan shoot someone from far away, like to engage in those moments. That's kind of when we pivoted to know like, all right, let's make it a more projectile she fires out instead.
So, kind of along those lines of where you guys experimented with the Cyberwire, what was the biggest hurdle in reworking her kit? Was it trying to figure out how to make stealth work with infinite duration? Was it trying to nail the translocator and like its new effectiveness? Or was it trying to find out how to make her more lethal or something else along those lines? Like, what was the hardest thing to get right about this version of Sombra that we're going to be getting on October 10th?
Yeah, I think the balance of interaction from both sides, in particular, it's like how do we keep that cat and mouse game alive while making it seem fair on both sides? In particular, I think Sombra as a hero, there's a lot of people don't always like playing against Summer because of some of the things that are in her kit, right? Whether it be the stealth, whether it be the hack, right? I think y'all are both aware of that at times. But we
playing against Sombra.
if you just approach, changing, you're like, yeah, it's like do these things, make these things worse. Like she's easier to play against. Like that's not what we're going for, right? We're going for a Sombra that's a lot more interactive, a lot more engaging, and you feel on the other side, even if she kills you, you feel like you had a chance, right? And getting that just right and getting that line just right, I think was probably one of the hardest parts. And because she is quite threatening now. She can duel you, but at the same time, if she has to escape or when she has to hack and then she comes out of stealth, there's opportunities for you to interact with that a lot more than there used to be.
So her damage is back to Overwatch 1 damage. So back to the, from Overwatch 1, she had 8, and then Overwatch 2, she had 7, and then the hack, Opportunist, and stuff. So Opportunist is gone, but so her damage is back to 8 damage, and hack doesn't provide the bonus damage anymore. What was the reasoning behind, I guess, removing the damage on, or the bonus damage on a hacked target?
Yeah, it's kind of connected with the reason why, like when we decided to make stealth a passive, part of that was, should a hero have 2 passives? Does that clutter the that aspect around the hero? But also, it's around like the idea of trying to make her, going back to the goals of trying to make her more engaging in fights and stuff. We saw like the damage bonus behind the gun is something we could bring to a more active state of like something players can see and interact and react to. So that was a reason why we wanted to move that element or like that window of damage for her into something else that became virus, right?
Sure. And then virus seems just like a single target Soldier 76 rocket that's dot damage instead of instant. I guess how does that fit with Sombra's kit? And we were also talking about how, having that burst damage out of invis is kind of scary.
Yeah, a little bit, right? So we actually had a version where instead of dealing the damage faster, it would deal it in a burst if the target was hacked. But that was she was
just like
very,
an instant.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
so that was very bursty. And as you said, you're coming out of stealth. You want to be able to react to that, and how do we do that the best on the opposing side? But also for Sombra in particular, I think it leans her. Hey, if you use virus on support, it's going to actually that window of time before they get their support passive back is going to be, it's going to be lengthened now, right? So she can target some of those players in particular in the back line and do like a better job of like making sure they can't get their health back in time. So, but we also just think overall, fantasy-wise, it felt like something that Sombra would do in terms of the damage over time. She's infecting you, right? So that's sort of some of the fantasy behind it.
Okay. So I guess was that more of like it's too strong, we need to make sure there's a way to react to it, right?
Yeah, I think in terms of the hack change, yeah, I think that was just like we tried that. We thought it would be, because we're just trying to inject some power into her dueling capability, but it was quite frustrating to play against when it was just the burst of damage after you hacked a target or you hacked them before, then use virus on them.
Okay, so translocator, not to compare these all to other people's abilities, but it does seem like kind of a worse Genji dash, just based on like, Genji, you just turn away and dash and you're gone. Sombra has to turn, throw it, wait, and then you go. So I guess what was the thought behind that in Sombra's kit?
Yeah, so there are some tweaks around translocator that might not be obvious with the balance changes noted. Like so it is being thrown a lot faster now, so the projectile speed was significantly increased, and comparison to like even a Genji deck, it is throwing like it is traveling a range of about 20 meters, and Genji's is around 15, so you're traveling a bit further. Um, but this we balance this around the idea of like now that she's in this more engaging combative kind of gameplay loop, we still wanted her to get to places where she needs to like either escape from fights, and that's why it's like a lot longer of a travel distance. And we even had like times where like it took longer for the translocator to teleport you. Like it wasn't like we ended up with 0.25 seconds now of travel time before you teleport, but it used to be longer there, and we've been tweaking around that window of time too. But part of that too is to help showcase like again a character around using stealth as a element. Like we want to help enemies track her too as a way of adding a window of opportunity to follow up with her. So that's another aspect. This still has its advantages as well, like it used to with like cleansing you and stuff like that. But yeah, we also like holistically look at abilities, not necessarily one-on-one comparisons between other
Sure.
heroes, but there's also the kit to consider, and that's kind of like Alec mentioned. Stealth has a factor into all of this, and that's why, like mentioned earlier, doing a lot of instant damage and stuff like that. It's something to be cognizant of when we're messing with these things for a stealth character.
Sure.
But yeah, kind of along the lines of Fitzy's question about Translocator, with the Sombra rework, the greatest change to her flow as a character, in my opinion, are the alterations to Translocator. What went behind the decision to adjust Translocator more heavily than her infinite invisibility?
Yeah, so the part of it was we were, like I mentioned earlier when we started, we were messing with like each of those key aspects around her: kit, hack, translocator, and stealth. And we were always looking back at our goals. That's kind of how we're always treating this approach of the rework. And for a while, we wanted to maintain like that those elements of translocator of dropping it, going in the fight, teleporting back, and we noticed that like regardless of how much we're like tweaking that timed window of like we even had times where it's like you have 3 seconds after you throw a translocator, teleport back to it, but we saw that Sombra players were still trying to play the same way, just in a much more limited approach. And when we noticed that when we reduced or got rid of that time completely, and it's just more of a throw and teleport, that now Sombra is like really thinking more around the fights and not more of her own loop, like Alec mentioned earlier about like kind of dropping it somewhere safe, going in, coming out safe, and then that we also saw enemies now can track her better. Like it's now something more responsive that you can be aware of and follow up with her during fights, which is similar to how kind of more consistent with how like other DPS heroes in general are engaging.
And yeah, now that her flanking potential is a little bit more limited with the inability to like set her translocator back like 40 light years away from the fight, now that she has to rely on it as like an escape ability, how do you perceive Sombra's role on a team now that her flanking potential is a little more limited with her like snappy short translocator?
Yeah, I think overall, I actually think her flanking potential is still intact because of
Yeah,
her
absolutely.
her damage output
Yeah.
now. I think in particular, like where Sombra may end up is if folks are out of position, they're isolated. Say like a Widowmaker or something. Sombra is going to be on them and be able to secure those types of kills. And so outside of that, I think she'll also be just more capable with her damage, like in a normal fight when she doesn't have to, be on that route all the time to get the benefit. But I think in particular, like her fighting potential is still there. She just has to be a bit more careful about, how she's going to disengage, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the teams playing against them are gonna have to be aware too. Like you're gonna have to peel. You're gonna have to do a lot better job of making sure you understand like where Summer is, because of that window of time for her to get the kill is going to be, it's going to be condensed now. Like she's going to be getting those kills a lot quicker than she used to.
Which I'm looking really forward to. I personally look at the Sombra rework, and I think this is much better as like a character design than what we have on live right now. I'm really looking forward to it.
Going back to the like translocator, really short duration or whatnot, was there, I guess, what was the number on that? And was there, what if it went down to like 3 seconds? You had 3 seconds before you had to leave. Is that something that you kept tweaking down before settling on, okay, let's just make an instant teleport? Or because in my fantasy of translocator, whatever, if I could make the translocator the way I wanted it, would be, you could throw it, shoot, and then when it like you can't interact with it, but once it lands, you translocate. So you throw it, you shoot, you do your stuff, and then it lands and you leave. So I guess not like a timed one, but more of a once it lands type of thing.
Yeah, so so we did try tweaking it down, like either 10 seconds or like I mentioned earlier, we did try going to 3 seconds, right? But even in those short time spans, like I said, Sombras would still try to play it safe, throwing it in the kind of loop they're doing now, and again, the enemy's struggling to kind of see where she's going. The idea of like, you remind me of the idea of like, what if it teleported you when it lands? We did try that too. If we noticed right away though, is like Sombra players would just like throw it up in the sky and then wait for it to land, like as a weird way to time it, and it was still kind of giving that same use case as like if it was a short duration of like 35 seconds or something like that.
But I guess is that a problem of, you're still really close to the fight. Yeah, I guess, is that really a problem of Sombra?
I think this version in particular is like pretty zippy in the sense of like it happens fairly quick, and you feel like it's a decent disengage tool because it actually puts you back into. It doesn't put you fully back into stealth, but it reduces the cooldown by 2 seconds. Right? So it cuts more than half the time off of it. So when we tried some of those versions, it felt like she was just waiting for that to happen, and felt like she was kind of in no man's land a little bit. So we've wanted to really like speed up that interaction and make sure like that was something like she felt a bit more confident in. It's like, okay, now I want to disengage and let this be a quick thing that I can do. If that makes sense.
Sure. Okay, so stealth's moved to a passive now. The cast time is pretty much instant. It's like the 0.25 or whatnot. Movement speed slower. You can't control when you go into stealth. How does this work with Sombra's kit? Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the things we wanted to do when moving to a passive was, make sure that it didn't feel like it was a friction element there. There was too much friction coming out of it. So there seems like the coming out of stealth is faster than it used to be. Even the hack time's reduced. There's things like there's actually a grace period. So when you enter stealth for that first 0.5 seconds that you're entering stealth, whether it be after you translocate or whether it be just passively running around, if you shoot, you're not going to get that front loaded coming out of stealth time, right? So for the first 0.5 seconds that you enter it, you're actually going to be able to shoot as quickly as you could normally.
Oh.
So there's little things like that we had to keep in mind, like when you're putting people into stealth as a passive, got to make sure that you reduce all of that friction there. So I think those are some of the things that it actually feels a bit more fluid as she's coming out of stealth than it did previously because it's a passive.
Yeah, that came in a bit later when we were playing with the passive. Yeah, so it's those awkward moments of like I'm like just about to engage and stealth started, but then I wanted to shoot, and that's where like there's that brief window of time. Like it's kind of because it kind of makes sense. You see her fading anyway, like she's not fully in vis, so there's still time to it's okay to ignore that kind of break period of not being able to use an ability or something. So that made things feel a lot fluid. with that. And to add to it too, like stealth being a passive, we kind of have to look at some of the strengths around it compared to being an active ability. That's kind of where the speed reduction came into place. But we still maintained things as well, like uh, uh, just the having a move speed in general, because we even tried like not having it, and that was way too much of a change around that. We also tried even increasing the radius around it too, the detection radius, to be much bigger. That's actually where we put in that nice quality of life change now of showing the detection radius. But then we just went back to what it is currently on live, which is that 4 meters. You just have the option
Oh,
now
so
to see it
that
if you
did get
want.
changed back.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
still matching what it is on live,
Okay.
or like right now in the current season where it is 4 meters. But now you have an option to the quality of life of like actually seeing it, so that can help the Sombra player know better that kind of distance she needs to be away from.
The 0.5-second grace period on getting out of like shooting while you're going into invis, that is genuinely a massive change that we didn't know about. So that is really, really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, did that change go in after we had tested it, or?
It was yes.
Okay.
We thought we had it hooked up correctly, but
Okay.
it wasn't. It was not in the build that you had.
Okay.
But yeah.
Shit, what was I gonna say? Speaking of, sorry to sidetrack real quick, of testing. So we did test the changes. Are we allowed to say what we, I guess, influenced on getting changed?
Yeah, I mean, go for it. Yeah.
I can't remember everything, but I know that the stealth speed, we were like, oh, it's a little too slow, so now we got that faster. We did talk about the invis range, because it was like 6 meters, right, or something.
It was 6 or 5 in that.
Yeah,
playtest, yeah.
that was around the time. Yeah, we're still having some increase.
I think we talked about the hack cast time because I was like, if you got to commit for the kill, like it's got to be a little more consistent. So yeah, just to share with people that like we did give some feedback, and stuff was changed. I'm sure there's plenty of people that want me to push for more, reload with EMP, but we'll just to share that we are giving our feedback and you guys are actually taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me speak on that a little bit. I think the thing that came out of that that we really wanted to address the most was, hey, her flank potential was down, and this is after some of those sessions, like really seeing some of those games, we wanted to really revisit Translocator in a sense of like, okay, what can it do to make that a bit better? It just felt like, hey, Sombras were dying if they ever even tried to engage. So the reduced cooldown, like cutting the stealth cooldown by 2 seconds, I think that was like one of the biggest things that came out of that. Whereas like, hey, this is sort of the feedback we got. How can we solve this? I think putting her instantly didn't get this like the cat and mouse game that we were looking for, but like reducing it by 2 seconds, it feels pretty good there. Where if you have something ready and you can anticipate where Summer's going to go, then maybe you can get the jump on her. But if she's tricky enough with it, like throws it over a wall, or sometimes you throw it straight up. Sometimes you can throw it in the air, and if they're not looking there, and then you'll drop down, you'll be in stealth, right? Things like that, she can get away. So making sure that she could still get away was one of the biggest things we needed to address, like after those sessions.
The EMP, so it just got the nerf, and I don't think I saw the other nerf. So now it does 30% down from 40%. And then also the ult charge increase. Is the ult charge increase on top of the current ult charge increase that we got last patch?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess what was the reason for both of those?
Yeah, so I mean, part of these came into just learnings of like, all right, now she has this new active damaging ability of virus. So that's where we're like tuning. Like, if she can do more damage, like with a virus like that, then we kind of have to adjust those cadences of how. That means she's going to build ult charge faster, and that means that when she does ult, that amount of damage she does to full health targets, in addition to landing a virus on them because they're already hacked after EMP and then shooting them down, like that was really closing that time window of like how quickly you can kill someone and react to. So that's kind of the reasons why we wanted to reduce some of that potency around EMP.
I mean, let's be honest, they're gonna get Suzu'd anyways, so it doesn't matter.
I think when we're just like considering like where the power budget of heroes are, we want to make sure it's not like too weighted in one element. And it did feel overall that was probably too weighted to EMP previously, and wanted to spread that out a bit.
Yeah, EMP's always been one of the strongest ultimates in the game, especially for engagements. If your entire team is jumping on them at the same time, they all just kind of evaporate. Now, is there a concern about EMP being too weak, especially with the like HP reduction and the no added bonus of doing bonus damage for Sombra on hack targets?
It's something we'll probably look at. You know, I think if anything, like I don't necessarily think it's too weak. I still think it's a really good engagement tool as an ultimate. I still think it's very strong there. You know, having the bonus the faster damage on the virus and be able to follow it up there, I think is still quite strong. So I think it's as an ultimate. We look at an ultimate compared to all the other ultimates in the game. I still think it's up there and being quite potent. But you know, we'll keep an eye on it in the first few weeks as the rest of her kit sort of figures out where those numbers land as well. You know,
Reload EMP.
So we
can
did
talk about that, yeah.
Okay.
we did visit it. Andre, did you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, no, it was a great question brought up of like, yeah, should EMP reload Sombra's weapon? And you know, then we had a discussion amongst the designers of like, what is the line of like where ultimates, which ultimates should reload weapons and stuff. You've seen us even in the past like add cases of like some ultimates do reload your weapon, and we kind of draw the line around like if the ultimate is taking away your engagement from weapons for too long, such as like a Reaper ultimate or a Junkrat ultimate where you're doing something else for like several seconds, then, or if the ultimate is like heavily focused on your weapon, like a Soldier 76 ultimate, for example, then those are times where we reload it. And Sombra's case is like it's an ultimate that you kind of quickly cast and then you're back to fighting, similar to like a Symmetra ultimate, for example, dropping the shields and going back into fighting. And in those cases, that's where we kind of draw the line of like, all right, if you're quickly using it and you're back to shooting, then we don't reload your weapon.
So I hear you. But does Sombra not need to use her gun during the 1.5 seconds that people are hacked? That's where I'm like, you have 1.5 seconds to do damage, and that's it. Because then after that, it's Suzu Transcendence, boom, 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 you know. So.
Yeah, and like for sure. I mean, like I wouldn't say we would never like consider this for like just, but that's kind of like how we approach the general sense of like reloading guns with
sure.
right? So I wouldn't say never say never, right? But
there's just a lot of heroes. The only heroes that I can think of top of my head, which I'm sure there's more, being Mei and Sombra, of course, the heroes I play that don't get reloaded with an EMP, that use their gun during the ultimate. Because like Roadhog, Cassidy, Reaper, blah blah blah, Genji has a blade. All of those like have their own gun part of their ultimate. Obviously Symmetra, yeah, that's more of like a defensive thing though. Anyways, but that's my thinking on that is like you have 1.5 seconds, and there's so many opportunities where you're shooting. You're like, well, I don't want to EMP because I want to reload and then go. So you have to like leave the fight, run back around, wait for your translocator. And obviously you don't have to now. But there's that like awkward, like I have my ult, but I have to wait 8 seconds to use it because I have to reset. That I think would, especially with it not coming up as often, it's nerfed 30% and nerfed the damage. So anyways, that's where I'll just keep putting that in your mind.
It's totally understandable, and like we'll keep an eye on it, no doubt. And that's you bring up points of like reloading and stuff, and that's where like we decided to reduce the reload time on her weapon as well, because if she's engaging more often or like staying within fights more often, she like the reload time of 1.4 seconds was a little bit higher end compared to your tracers or soldier 76s and stuff around that element of like around that like gun style. Since she's like a submachine gun style, that's kind of where he saw like, all right, maybe it could reload a bit faster along with all these changes. So that's part of it, and we're gonna keep an eye on that too. Like if we see from learnings of this rework, we'll tune like the ultimate costs or even this aspect around gun reloading as well.
I mean, if you need an excuse to make it make sense how she reloads her gun when she EMPs, you could just say she like downloads more bullets. I mean, that would work perfectly fine, I think.
I like
She
that.
shoots
I like
RAM
that.
bullets.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly. Just download more bullets like you download more RAM. You know, it's no biggie. No one will question it. But adding on to what we were talking about when we had the creators testing out the earlier versions of Sombra, when you were working with them, what were the most insightful and helpful things that you gathered from all of them in terms of like feedback and stuff?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was to really get a nice fresh set of eyes on everything we were doing with the rework. You know, like for a long time internally, we're going through a long series of just changes, and getting the same people internally playing over and over again, and they're seeing the journeys of like what were changed, what we went back and forth, and like sometimes even that can be confusing in playtests of like, wait, the other day translocator did this and now it's this, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So then like holistically looking at it, and presenting it to even experienced players too was great insight to get that fresh feedback from it and learn from, and like also just spectate and watch like how people are approaching it for the first time, right? So I'd say that was the biggest thing. And in addition to just like getting new ideas and stuff, like that's kind of where we saw it and reacted to, like translocator can now, like, because before it didn't, where it would translocator would reduce the stealth cooldown. But after all that testing, we reacted and added that in, which kind of helps close that little time window of Sombra getting away, but still having a window of opportunity for players to still react. And that's kind of like shows that little bit of what we can balance around too, of like that window. Like if we wanted to, we could make that stealth cooldown reduction even shorter or longer, or stuff like that to help balance changes in the future.
And I also thought it was really cool seeing some of our feedback actually make it into the game. Like two things that I really, really enjoyed was the ability to now, whenever you throw your translocator at like a wall or the floor, it'll instantly proc rather than you have to wait the full 0.25 seconds. And also on live, if you translocate, your camera gets locked. And now there's a setting to disable that, which I think is really cool. It helps make her feel a lot more fluid, and I'm really, really happy about that. I'm really happy that you guys took that feedback and implemented it into the game. I think that's really, really cool. And now with Sombra being so different than she was before, what are the greatest potential concerns that the team has about balancing Sombra from this point forward in the future? Before, it seemed as if her greatest problem areas were that the team tried addressing on multiple occasions were the duration of her silence, the damage she did to hack targets, and hacking people when invisible. What are you anticipating to be her biggest pain points in the future for people playing her and people playing against her?
Yeah, I think the thing we're really going to look out for early, and hopefully not speaking this into existence too much, but she can, Zen comes out of spawn. She can be right on him. She's pretty deadly, right? And if the team is not like helping out like some of those moments, like you could really take someone out of the match. So we're gonna watch that interaction, like how much damage potential she has, so that she can't just bully people in that way, like over and over again. But really, like I think that like something that could be concerned there coming out of it, and also how this plays on console, on controller in particular. We see like a lot of heroes can be difficult when you have to sort of whip your camera around and do an action like Winston, right? Winston has to leap out of a fight or something. It can be a lot more difficult to do that on a controller, and just seeing how that experience in particular is for console players, because a lot of times with the translocator, you're not throwing it forward a lot of times as you're like shooting a target. A lot of times you're going to like whip it up in the air. You're going to throw it behind you. You might throw it forward too, but you want to be able to really decide where you're going to go, and that takes sometimes being able to either higher sense or something like that, or being able to move your mouse across quite quickly. It's a little bit more difficult on a controller.
I'm sorry,
and
I don't want to have a PC versus console thing, but has there been changes that you've been like, oh no, we can't implement this because this isn't possible on console? Or is that something that would ever really hold back potential of a hero?
It's more about making it easier to do on console in particular, like adding options and that make that experience a lot more fluid and better. There's like we're continuing to do a bunch of those even in like season 7. I mean, at the beginning of the season, and then continuing to do that after that as well. We're looking at like, hey, If it's hard for Lucia to wall ride, how can we make that experience better on console? But we're not going to necessarily change what that feels like on PC for that, right?
Sure.
But adding options, I think, is the thing we normally look at. It's like one idea we have right now is like on console, can you whip between sensitivities really quickly? Being able to have like a option there as a button and be able to do that. So like if you are in trouble, you can like press something that it allows you to whip your camera around a lot faster. But that's something the team's looking at as just like a holistic experience
Sure.
going forward.
And yeah, I mean, if Zens are getting bullied and spawn camped really often, I personally don't really find a problem with that.
They can switch to Kiriko. They're fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can just press E on the floor and you'll be fine. I mean, just get off Zen. I mean, you can stay on Zen. I would love it if you did. But so I know we talked about the cyber wire earlier, the little whip thingy. What were some other of your favorite ideas that you had for the Sombra rework that didn't make the final cut?
Yeah, so we definitely made a list of a bunch of ideas. Like just, you know, when the window was open of like what new things could Sombra do, like that are all stealth hackery kind of hacky stuff. Like definitely embraced a lot of my nerd fantasies of like all these stealth games. I love stealth games, so I play a bunch of things. So some aspects. So besides the Cyberwire one we mentioned, I like the idea of like we called it the swoop stealth. Of like at one point she had like stealth was a quick dash ability on a super low cooldown, kind of like Tracer-ish in a sense of like she dashes, moves, bursts in a direction, but then goes in stealth that's unbreakable for like 2 seconds. And we saw like, you know, the problem with that was like people don't like engaging with unbreakable stealth because it's like, how do I, where did she go? And like, I don't even like what's happening. I couldn't even counter that. Even if it was a brief moment, it still felt too oppressive. But it was interesting, like to feel that as at least as a Sombra player. I also liked some ideas around traps with her. I mentioned in the blog as well, like stuff about we explored a laser wire trap. This is actually dated back even when Sombra was originally being made, of like actually planting a trap that shoots out a laser and detonates on anyone who walks through it. But that had problems of like too much setup and not necessarily a lot of enough guaranteed times where it's effective. But it was cool to like play with that. Even pivot a little bit from that, like at times to what was called it drops a trap on the ground, or even just drop something on the ground that immediately creates a bunch of like shocky like caltrops on the ground kind of a thing, and that would shock enemies on the ground. But again, it was a bit not kind of engaging in the way we wanted, with like a character coming out of stealth and like connecting with the hack ability and the rest of her kit, right? So that was a bunch of stuff. Yeah, there was one time I tried like called it just upgrade. Like she would just upgrade herself like a computer person, and just her gun and hack and translocator all get buffed in a way. But that kind of felt like just either like all of them would have a different functionality of like hack is faster and uninterruptible, and the gun is like more powerful, getting that damage bonus back, or translocator would have a shorter cooldown. But these were kind of like not as obvious to players playing against Sombra to know that, and we wanted to again introduce something that's more interactive with the damage. So a lot of fun ideas to explore around Sombra's kits when it comes to damage.
I like the Invis Blink one. That sounds cool, but also maybe a little miserable.
They get a Hanzo, you're fine.
Yeah.
They get a Hanzo, you're fine. Just get Widow, have ult every fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know she's getting a lot of changes. There's been not as many changes to the heroes I'm about to talk about, but like Torb, Mei, Zarya, you know, they're all getting some reverted stuff with keeping some of the stuff. I know obviously anybody you touch their hero, they're gonna be a little bit worried, they're gonna be a little bit scared. If their hero's fun or viable or whatever. So essentially the question is, are these changes possible to be, you know, partially reverted, partially changed? We've had a long list in the past of like, oh, it takes like a year to get a change. I guess I'm just trying to reinforce that you guys will essentially keep an eye on it and, you know, make some changes here in a couple weeks, few weeks, whatever. You know, being that it doesn't work out, you know, the numbers are like, oh, she's terrible, she's OP, whatever. Yeah.
I think when we approach a rework versus doing like tuning on a hero, it's really about like having all the pieces in place, right? And
Sure.
afterwards, like if things need to be tweaked, like things will get tweaked, right? But I don't think it's going to be like, hey, that ability virus that took, you know, a lot of time and resources and everything. It's like, oh yeah, 2 weeks later, that's just got like, that's not necessarily the way we're looking at it. It's like, this is now a building block for her that we can really configure in the right space to get her into the place we want to be, you know, and feel effective enough on her and feel that there's enough interaction against her as well. So tweaking, I think, will be things, but I think we're feeling pretty good about all the building blocks that are in place for this version of Sombra.
And
Sure.
to me, it seems like the reason why Sombra was reworked was for two big reasons. Her being really annoying to play against, and also lack of ease in picking her up for new players, because they would, or not even new players, but just like basically everybody who wasn't good at Sombra, which is most people, where they would just throw their translocator down on a health pack and then spend half the game running from their health pack to the fight, which would take 5 years. Are there any other heroes that you're looking at in a similar light that you would like to make large changes to as well?
There's a hero. It's not a rework. Let me just state this. It is not a rework. I'm calling it a readjustment for now,
Okay.
but we're looking at Farah and we're looking at how to change a little bit of her playstyle to be, you know, we keep saying like more active, but it's really about looking at how her feathering playstyle, like sort of floating feathering above, and making that something that's more engaging in the horizontal space as well. And being able to, she's a bit faster, but she won't be up in the air feathering the same way she will. So that's something we're still looking at, still experimenting with, still trying to find like what the right balance of all that is. But that's something we are looking at the moment.
I am so happy I asked that question.
I got a lot of Flora
That is
comments
great
over
to
here.
know. There's a lot of forum posts, tweets.
No, I said Flora. I said Flora. People saying Flora.
So it's been pretty positive internally so far, and we're gonna continue to like make sure it's like the right thing to do. But that's one thing we're looking at with Farah in particular. But I get in trouble for talking about some of those things like way out in advance, so that's one that's like not that far, but you know, not next season, and not the
Okay.
season, not the season after, but like you know,
All right.
not crazy far.
I feel like that's
Okay.
pretty far away. Um. Okay, I have a couple little light questions, I guess.
Yeah.
Or if you would, I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to take questions from chat. I don't know if there's any. I don't even know if you have chat pulled up on either of our chats.
I do have one. I do see one. That
Do you have
keeps
any
coming up.
question you want to answer from chat?
Yeah, I noticed. I just want to clarify that the alt charge for when you hack a target is there. Like that was like a bug before where
The
it wasn't
check
showing
mark.
up, but the check mark, yeah,
Okay.
if they have the ultimate when she
Nice.
hacks someone, that is there still.
Is it in this next patch? Because
It will be. Yeah.
okay.
Does the life weaver bug get fixed in this patch too? Where they get immune to EMP from the pedal?
That one we did fix. I forget.
Oh,
if
it's
it
still
did.
around. It's still around.
Oh,
Oh,
But
is it still
there.
okay? Then that will be coming with this change too. Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. Oh my god.
oh, what is the what the virus cooldown? If you know.
6 seconds.
6 seconds. Okay, so
Yeah, so it's
is that
matching translocator actually.
is that
hack.
is that Soldier 76 rocket cooldown, right? I don't know. You've changed that.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Now it's the same as Soldier Rocket and Hack.
And the specification on how translocate works with stealth, if you translocate, it reduces by a strict value or a percent. Like, let's say, so it's 3.5 seconds for stealth. 1 second has passed. Will it reduce it by 2 seconds, is what you mentioned, I believe?
Yes.
So it is
Okay.
reducing, and if it's like you're about to get stealth, like it's close to the cooldown, you'll just get it after you translocate. So it is like a flat reduction.
And the 0.5 second window there, does that work with EMP? Like translocate
Yes.
EMP?
Yeah, EMP,
Okay.
virus, and the gun, like any kind of way, and quick melee too, like any kind of way of like canceling stealth.
Because if there was anything that was like about the whole thing, it's just, oh, I have another one. With stealth just being a little bit clunky was kind of hard. But that's again something newish. I guess the hopeful of if it's still clunky, working on making it not clunky.
Yeah, one thing we did that we did afterwards, we actually reduced the cast time on virus as well too. So that's down to 0.1 seconds.
Oh,
So it feels a little bit faster in being able to land that. I think like that's one of the things because you had the time you were coming out of stealth and then you had the cast time on virus because originally we had like I think a 0.25 cast time, Andre, and now that's down to 0.1, so that feels a little snappier too, and you don't feel as much friction there.
So you got rid of the translate. Okay, so you can't what's it called? Interact with translocator to destroy it now. Was there ever thought to put like stealth on that somehow? Whether it be a toggle to like, I never want to go stealth right now. Let me make it so I never go stealth. Being that you're shooting in the front line, like, okay, I don't want to go stealth, and then, okay, now I'm done shooting. I want to go stealth. Let me turn it on so my 3.5 seconds are. Like the 3.5 seconds is always going, but you can decide whether or not you want to go into stealth or not, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we think we think a lot about button bloat. We think a lot about like how much overhead we're putting on the player as well. And I think doing that may just be like too much to think about. But it is something we'll be looking at, we'll be considering if it is necessary. But we wanted to go with like the cleanest version of the kit first and see how that initially goes.
Again, I just think that's of the kit. I think that is going to be potentially the clunkiest, depending on like, oh, I didn't want to go stealth there. Oh, I didn't want to go stealth there. Like that's just going to be something that happens. But again, I don't think the 0.5 second window is there. But also just like the voice lines of like, you're trying to sneak and then like you go invis, but you didn't want to because you were setting up for a hack, and then you win invis, and then you came out of invis to do the thing, and you said the voice line, and now you're there, and just that type of thing is something that having it on okay, it's just going to happen, you have no control over it, will be more of an edge case. Like it's not going to be like a constant thing, but like is something that I would want. At any rate,
that's really what that grace window is there for, to cover like a bunch of those cases, right?
Sure.
Cover like the main ones about shooting and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's something we will be observing as she goes live.
And there's also some confusion from the viewers about how invis and contesting / making progress on objectives works. So I know that you don't start going invis whenever you're making progress or contesting a point, but is it possible to go invis while contesting or making progress on a point? Like if you throw your translocator down and the cooldown goes below 0 seconds, do you just go invis anyways, or how does that interaction work exactly?
Yeah, so this is something we played around with a bunch of like different little ideas on like how passive stealth could work around objectives. So what we settled with was, if you're invisible, you still don't contest, similar to how it works currently. And but if you are not invisible and you contest, then the cooldown will actually pause until you stop contesting. And that's kind of the balance we settled with, because there was times where like we didn't do anything and the cooldown is just triggering automatically, but then we found it's too intrusive at times when you're pushing the payload or contesting the point where you have to like manually keep resetting your cooldown. So this is the kind of balance we settled. We'll definitely keep an eye on it because it is a tricky aspect around it, especially different objectives like payload versus the capture point, right?
Sorry, just to clarify, it pauses at 0 seconds. So like the second you get off.
It'll pause at a minimum, I believe 1 second. So like there's a little bit of grace. Like you don't have to wait the full cooldown if you stop contesting. There's a little time, so you get a little bit of time, and then there's still like a 1 second to wait afterwards. So it should be relatively quick.
But if you were to translocate off the point, you would just instantly go in stealth because it minus 2 seconds.
Yes, because you would stop contesting. I believe so. You would stop contesting when you're teleporting, and that would then make you go into stealth. Yeah.
Is it possible to be on like a payload that's being contested, translocate while still in the range of the payload, and go invisible, or will it still prevent you from going invisible?
Oh, you're really getting in those use cases. It's a good question, though. I think so. I think you'll still be contesting if you're like teleport within the payload contest range? I want to say yes, but it's like those use cases are very tricky to know. And I know we've been changing it back and forth internally, so my brain is like thinking about what we used to do versus now. I'm pretty sure yes, because it's gonna be constant listening for like, am I currently contesting?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
So
know we're
you
gonna come at you
probably
with
have
these
to get
use cases.
Yeah, I know it's
Yeah,
great. I
we
love
wanna
this. Yeah,
know.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll test
So
it
we
for you,
gotta
plenty.
translocate off the point in order to be invis, probably.
Unless you go high enough, which is still off the
Oh
point.
yeah,
but
unless you go high. Well, it's still off the point. Just up.
Yeah, it's like if you break that range, I think the payload has like a 7-meter range on it.
Can you translocate into the payload? Because we know that's going to happen at some point on one of the payloads. That was a joke.
Yes.
That was just a
No,
bug that
it's a-
happens
it's a
all the
bug,
time.
yeah.
Oh wait, oh sorry, you mean the famous bugs
Literally
bug
into the
No.
payload, yeah. It's the one that keeps coming back every now and then.
Yeah, also keeping an eye on that.
Well, cool. I got my questions.
that-
If you'd like to answer any questions from chat, I know they are dying. If there's any you can answer, can I just have
there
my?
like, are there like some top ones that you keep seeing?
I mean, the check mark and the contesting payload was. I could just we know about the old check marks now. We know the contesting thing. It's gonna be a little funky, but oh, Sombra Mythic. Oh, come on, we got all the Shimada.
An actual good question that I see that I did not think about. I don't think anybody who's tested Sombra from the creators thought about this. Is it possible to still emote as Sombra since stealth now activates on its own, or does emote count as like a thing that prevents you from going invis?
So emote will cancel your stealth. So if you emote and like if you're just continuously emoting too, like if you're doing her awesome dance animation, like that will pause the cooldown of stealth as well. So you could always showcase your emotes.
Got it. So emoting is now confirmed an offense, like an action that you're taking, an attacking action. It is BM confirmed. Got it. Understood. Thank you.
Well, if you see any questions, I don't know which ones you're allowed to answer. Which
Andre, you see anything you wanna
sorry
take?
Sorry, no. I mean, if you guys have something else to bring up, feel free. I could take a look too.
I'm just having them ask questions. I know they're like, oh, I gotta ask now.
Yeah, I think that's all I have, and my chat is now just being silly, so I'm gonna ignore them.
Oh, did we didn't talk about iframes with translocator, but she still has that right on like a.
That's actually the same, yeah. The same.
It's just you just have to time it differently.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and like since now it'll
happen and after two.
You like.
Yeah, if you put it right down,
If you drop it on your feet or something, right? Like you can still. That's like a quick way to immediately get those frames to block things too, or cleanse yourself as well as the advantages still of translocator.
Oh, something else I want to ask about an interaction. So let's say you get graved as Sombra, but you threw your translocator before you got graved. Will you translocate out of the grav, or does the hard CC cancel the translocator, just explodes and doesn't do anything?
That's a good question. Yeah. When you throw it, it will still teleport you. Like the moment it will activate. So once you get that throw off, like. If you were to throw it and get grabbed or some kind of like
because hinder stops you,
right? Yeah, or a stun would, right? Like those kinds of cases, she will teleport out of it. We actually tried before where it wasn't doing that and it would just cancel, but that felt too bad for Sombra. So that's where we're at now. Of like, yeah, it'll actually go. Yeah,
so you can predict a grav and jump out of it. That is awesome. Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, throwing and getting hindered did not feel good. I think that was one of the feedback I gave. I don't know if you took that or if it was already in the works, but I was just like, yeah.
We felt like once the physical object is out there, like that's the thing that's like bringing Sombra towards it. So it just also didn't really match the fantasy. If it's like I throw this thing, then I get like my body gets stunned, but that's still supposed to like call me to there, right? So
now if you get slept as a doing it, do you just teleport in your sleep, or does it cleanse it?
That's a good question.
I don't know that answer.
Well, it will still cleanse you when you teleport. Like the moment you start teleporting, you're like you remove all status effects. So there's that. And I saw another question about like Kiriko's Suzu ability that won't like impact her invis at all. Like if she Suzu's a allied Sombra, but it will cleanse the virus, right? Because that's a type of damage over time ability similar to burn, so we'll cleanse that.
One more clarification thing, just for chat. I know the answer, but if you get hit with the virus, you can cleanse it via like a health pack, like Ash's TNT, correct?
Oh, sorry. Wait, say that again. Sorry.
So if you get hit with the virus and you're taking the dot damage, if you grab a health pack, does it stop it?
It should function whatever the same functionality as the Ash
TNT.
burn.
Okay,
So
just making sure.
I forget off the top of my head which way.
I
that
think you
goes.
guys said yes, but I can't remember.
My last question. This is something that I asked about before while I was playtesting, but one of the problems I encountered with virus was I would virus somebody and the hit markers would be the same as if I'm shooting them with my gun. And so I wouldn't be able to tell because I would throw my virus, I'd start shooting them, and then I get hit markers, and I don't know if those hit markers are from virus or if it's from my gun. Is there some sort of like different audio cue now for virus, or is there some way to distinguish virus DOT versus like, oh, these are my bullets hitting you?
I believe there is, but one of the other things that we put in there is that it has impact damage, right? So just making sure like that you hear that initial impact and that
Okay.
sort of registers, okay, virus is working now, right?
Okay.
And that was one of the audio things we changed since that playtest.
That's really nice. Okay, thank you. No, yeah, the impact damage will definitely help address that problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're at time.
Yeah.
We're gonna go eat lunch now.
No, but seriously, thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you guys.
thank
This
you.
was amazing. Glad to be here.
Thank you guys for being here. Not only answering our questions, but chats as well. And to also let us play test and like give some feedback.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah, hopefully it's helpful. I know you guys say it's helpful.
Yeah, can't stress it. No, it was really great to have you guys like play test and even doing this stream now to help clarify things. It's really awesome to do, and we love the passion you guys have, and you and the community, everything. It's great.
But yeah, we look forward to keeping eyes on it. Just that's it. There's just, again, the history has just been like, oh no, we're gonna change, and then it's gonna be like 6 months, and I know it's not gonna be like that, but I just want to reinforce that with everybody else. But thank you guys for being here. Ruben, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, being able to playtest was a really awesome experience. Feeling like I'm a part of the development process in some way has been absolutely incredible. Having the stream is a wonderful opportunity. I'm so glad to be able to talk with you guys in front of everybody so that we could all interact with each other and ask all the burning questions that we have. This has been a wonderful experience and wonderful opportunity. I'm extremely grateful. Thank you for having this entire thing. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excited to see how it goes on Tuesday, So going to be watching some streams and seeing how y'all do and everything. Seeing if you're bullying those Zens, So
I'm going to feed for the first 24 hours.
Maybe lay off for a day before we, so we don't like immediately nerf her. But yeah, no, seriously, it's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you again for everything.
Yeah.
All right,
I will single-handedly drop the Zen pick rate to 0% on launch. Don't worry.
All right.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.